Hi, I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble from Chris Gamble's Analog Life.
And this is our second semi-live podcast. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Dave, how are you? It's too bad we still don't have a name, huh?
Yeah, we still don't have a name. We've been agonising over it, checking if the domain names are available, and it's just next to impossible to get a decent domain name. It's crazy.
I know, and I remember seeing a thing a while back about how I think either all the 4-letter or all the 5-letter, regardless of how silly the actual spelling is, they're all gone. Like every single one is registered, just in case.
Every 4-letter one?
I think every 4-letter and maybe every 5-letter.
Oh, unbelievable. Well, it's not surprising, really. It's just next to impossible to get a decent domain name. But anyway, such is life in the digital age these days. If you're setting up that's the thing, if you're setting up like a business or an online podcast like this, it's just so important to be able to get the baselevel.com domain name. Because we thought about getting the .fm domain name for this podcast.
Yeah,
because,
we didn't want to pay $70
radio. Yeah, $70 for that, as opposed to $5 or $6 for a normal .com. It's just crazy, but nobody really recognises the .fm domains and things like that. People just assume everything's .com. Your average user does anyway. So it's pretty important to get that .com available.
Yeah, and it's almost like people are so dependent on Google these days, it's like almost tempting to do otherwise, but still, we want to make sure that if people are listening, they can find us, so that's important. But thank you to everyone who did bring some recommendations to the table. If you didn't know, Dave and his community over at EEV blog, they have a really great forum that just came back up today, and it was down for a little bit, but tons of great suggestions and tons of great advice if you've never been over there, so make sure you get on there if you're listening to this and you've never been there before.
Thanks for the plug, but unfortunately it will be down again today. I've just brought it back up temporarily so that we can see it here. But
gotcha.
Yes, it will go back down because I'm in the process of moving web servers. I'm moving onto the cloud. I'm doing the quote marks there. And yeah. My servers, I've had my blog on a shared server for a long time, but now I'm doing almost 1 terabyte of data transfer per month, which is just crazy.
That's a lot.
For a shared server, yeah. So it tends to drop out a fair bit. So I'm trying a new cloud-based server based on, it's going onto the Amazon, it's backing onto the Amazon cloud server or something like that. So I'm in the process of doing a full website or a full, website backup and hopefully transfer it without a hitch. But yeah, fingers crossed. It's a big move anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty crazy. I mean, you imagine talking to yourself from 10 years ago and being like, I've got about 1 terabyte of data that I need to move over. I just imagine telling that to myself and passing out, from, the 10 years ago, me passing out.
Well, exactly. I was talking I was getting a new computer at work the other day. I mentioned this in the other podcast, the first one, and we were, it was a sort of a youngish computer guy sort of installing it for me, and I mentioned how, when I was a boy, my first computer had, 5 kilobytes, 4 kilobytes of memory, and it was just, and you just see the shock in his eyes, and, it was, it was remarkable.
Well, it's crazy because it's kind of like a boutique kind of coming back thing of creating these really small computers now. One of my friends from work, actually, he's putting together his own 8-bit computer just for the hell of it, just putting together to see how it works and trying to get it to interface with modern stuff, and it's all built on DIP type parts, and he's got the whole thing up and running. He's got SD-RAM and everything, and even could talk to hard drives.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems very popular. Everyone sort of seems to be doing these embedded processors in FPGA, rolling their own, or they're re-implementing a 6502 and an Apple II embedded in a FPGA, or there's even some people out there actually building the real hardware back from the day. You can actually go out and buy an Apple II. No, sorry, an Apple I, is it?
Really?
You can buy an original Apple. Yeah, you can buy an original Apple I kit. Go figure. It's, some guy hasn't duplicated the layout because he thought that was, sacrilege to, because the layout is sort of, legendary. The Woz did it and, all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so,
all that
mythical
culture around the Apple people. Yeah.
Yeah, so, hey, you can buy a kit of the Apple One. Go figure. And, yep. And apparently, the guy asked for permission to get the original ROM image, and Apple said no or something. But then the Woz stepped in and said, well, bullshit, I wrote that, and I'm going to give it to you. So apparently the Woz just, actually gave it to him and told Apple to go shove it or something like that. So
well, that's commendable. I mean, for all the DRM and everything you see these days, it's nice when they open it up, even if it is 20, 30 years out.
Well, exactly. All right, so what have we got in today's show, Chris? We have no idea, right?
Well, yeah, like usual, not too much up on the plate. We did have some great suggestions on the forum. There's a spot on there for questions for if you have any questions for us. Dave made a good note that not as much the tutorial side of things, but more of the real life problems you're having, or maybe industry issues you want to talk about. That would be more of the target we're going for. So we got a couple of things about that. Talk about China and electronics and everything like that. And other than that, talking about app notes and LEDs and the future. We should talk about the future at some point here.
Yes, we should indeed.
I hear it's important.
First up, I've got I noticed that on the Adafruit site, there's a new Arduino documentary coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently. And the trailer, the trailer's up there. So if you go to Adafruit's website, there's a trailer of this Arduino documentary, and they're interviewing all sorts of people and the original designers, and it looks very well produced and very professional and everything else. So I'm really looking forward to watching the full thing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's almost like history's already folding back on itself. I mean, Arduino hasn't been around more than 10 years, I don't think, so it's good that they're documenting
how long is it? I've actually got no idea. When did the actual thing first start? I'm sure it's a lot longer than what we think, because I've only known about it for a year or something. But
yeah, that's true.
I'm sure it's
yeah, like out in Italy, it must have been for a little bit longer, but looks like 05. Yeah, 05. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Oh, really? 05. Wow. Yeah. Well, I suppose it didn't really start picking up until the sort of, the hacker maker crowd and Make Magazine got onto it and all that those sort of people, and then it just exploded, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Whereas before that, I think it was pretty niche little, it was just, yet another little, microcontroller embedded development board / system, really, so.
Yeah, it's amazing you really do need that critical mass. You don't, your site's starting to have that too with the forum and everything, but it's almost like, how do you get to that point where it's, all right, now we have enough people that really care, and then you could start getting the experienced users helping out the younger users, and or not even younger, just newer, and it really takes that critical mass though to really get off the ground.
Well, it does, and I don't think you can easily create that critical mass overnight. You just have to keep at it, and you slowly build up an audience, and I guess it comes to a point where you just realise that, shit, I've got, look at how many people are contributing to this thing now, and it's, I kind of get that with the blog, I just started out, and it's had pretty constant growth ever since day one, but, I don't really remember the day when I thought, oh, geez, look at how many viewers I've got. Look at the critical mass. It just sort of keeps growing and growing. And there was no one point where it suddenly just goes bang. But I guess when it hits Make Magazine or something like that, that has an instant audience of 100,000, or I don't know what the circulation is, but
that's true. And
it's probably a couple 100,000.
If there's any Make Magazine editors out there, we will happily be linked onto your site. Thank you. We would appreciate it.
Yes, please, we would. Yes, we're not afraid to leech off somebody else's success.
That is right. We are shameless.
No shame whatsoever.
I don't know, the Arduino thing, though, I think there's... I've read about it a lot more than I've used it. I've used it a couple times. But even comparing it to the Launchpad that we talked about last time, one of the things that's really big on there is, like, you've already got analog built into it. And so that right there is pretty great for interfacing to a lot of devices. So if you don't have that, and you have to start talking to an A to D, there's all these stumbling blocks that come up that people are going to be like, you know what, this is too much work. I'm just going to go do something else, watch TV or go work on some other project.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's it pretty much is on the hardware side. There's nothing special about it at all. It's just a microcontroller. It's just an AVR microcontroller in a socket, and it doesn't really have any support circuitry around. It's got the expansion header, of course, the shield header, but there's nothing different there at all. But what sets the Arduino apart is the software ecosystem behind it. That really simplistic programming interface, which is called wiring. And it's based on C, and it's pretty darn, it's almost identical to C, but it includes all the libraries in there, and it really is very easy to use, and that's what really sets it apart from the Launchpad or the some other microchip PIC development board or something like that. It's just the software ecosystem.
Yeah, and that happens with a lot of other products too. I mean, like, it's not as simple, but I mean, you look at like the Beagle boards. I got a chance to talk to Jason, who's in charge of the Beagle board community over at TI, and that, I mean, they have a critical mass, but they're still, I think one of the things that they're lacking is they're still at such a high complexity of the language and the board itself that they run into like acceptance issues where they can do really cool things. I mean, those things are running quadcopters, but it's harder to get less experienced people involved. So that might be a jumping point after an Arduino runs out of headroom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's all sorts of, you can get, you were talking about, I think the Beagle board had like a 1 gigahertz processor in it now. Yeah. Was that you? Somebody was telling me about that, and yeah, that's just, it's just incredible. So there are, and it's compatible with is it compatible with the Arduino Shield or something?
There might be conversion kits, but it's not directly compatible. It's much much more like an industry type kit. I mean, that's what it was really made for, I believe, and it kind of spawned into a community. Don't quote me on that, but I know that it's from the industry kits I've seen, it's much closer than an Arduino might be. Yeah, well, I think the Beagle board is pretty much, it's just, there's nothing new about that either. It's just a standard industry development board that a lot of people have got around. It just has that critical mass, which makes it into something special, it's, apart from that, there's dozens, probably hundreds of companies out there with all these development boards, and they're all pretty much the same. Yeah, power,
it is the community that sets it apart, really.
Yeah.
What user base do you have, and what's the price of the board, and is it generic enough to be used in Jelly Bean applications, and all that sort of stuff. So
there's an application I saw of the Beagle board that we're talking about. I saw one today, and it's pretty cool. Have you ever heard of Antipasto Hardware Blog? You ever been on that site?
I've heard about it. I don't think I've been on there though.
I can send you a link real quick, but one of the things that the guy in there has been doing, he ported, BeagleBoard has its own version of Linux on it. Usually it's running Angstrom, but it can run a couple other things. But this guy actually made his own graphing calculator on the Beagle Touch, which is a touchscreen kit you can get, and then he put, like a TI-89 or HP50, and he actually made his own hardware, or his own graphing calculator. Now, I don't know if there's an interface. You might have to get a keyboard, but I saw this thing, and I'm just like, whoa. So you can do graphing.
Very cool.
Matrices and everything like that. So definitely people out there that are doing some cool things.
Oh, yeah, they are. I'm just constantly amazed at what people are doing. I'm going, because I know how much effort will go into a project like a graphing calculator like that. And, with my scientific calculator watch, I've had guys working on the software side of that for me, and it plays chess and everything now.
Oh, yeah? That's awesome.
And it's the world's only chess playing watch. So, and there's all this other stuff built in, and I just know how much time it takes to write stuff like that. And, these people out there just have all this time available to dedicate to these projects. It's really amazing.
And I think we should give a toast to all the significant others of all those people out there doing this work. They're very welcoming of technology in their homes, obviously. So it's a big cheers to them.
Absolutely. And those developers out there who are just, those hobbyists out there who are developing some kick-ass project, and they stick it on YouTube or they stick it on their webpage and they get 50 people view it, and they don't get success and, recognition from it. So,
well, hopefully that's what we're here for.
It's just incredible. Well, exactly. If you've got a very cool project, we might give you a shout out. And at least we've got a couple of thousand viewers. I noticed that I think the views for the first show were like almost 2,500 or something like that.
Thank you.
It was certainly over 2,000. So there you go. We have an audience.
Tell your friends. Yay, we love you.
The coolest radio show in town without a name.
Or at least the coolest one
and without guys with nice radio voices.
Oh, right. Yeah, we have to get up really close to the microphone and start talking in a low voice.
Yes. And we have to give away icy cold cans of Coke.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, that's a thing here in Australia.
Oh, is it really?
You guys probably don't understand, but all the Sydney radio stations back in the 80s used to give away icy cold cans of Coke.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it's a bit of a running gag with...
That's pretty funny.
With radio stations here in Sydney.
No, these days they just give away concert tickets, so I guess we'd have to give away like Maker Faire tickets or I don't even know what, maybe like hardware, like DevCon kind of tickets or something. I don't know what we'd ever give away.
Right. So how much does it cost to go to one of these Maker Fairs? I've never really looked into the actual details.
I'm not too sure myself. Like I said in the last show, I didn't get the chance to hit the one up in Detroit. I heard really good things about it, but I was away for the weekend. I think it was, I don't even want to say how much I think it is because that's an outright lie.
But, actually somebody, might have been on the forum, somebody, after the first podcast, they like how I said there's nothing like a Maker Faire here in Sydney or in Australia, and everyone's going, you should start one, and apparently the company who run the Maker Faire, sorry, I forget their name.
It's O'Reilly.
Was it you mentioned them? O'Reilly, that's it. Apparently they run they have support available if you want to do a mini Maker Faire.
Yeah.
So I haven't looked into the details for that. So
okay.
Who knows? Yeah, maybe we could have something like that.
Yeah, I've seen there's a couple. There was one out in Providence, and I've seen there's a couple. I think there was one right up near the Detroit one. There was one in, it's another Michigan town. I'm sorry, Michiganders. But yeah, they do have smaller ones where it's kind of... I think it's good to get like it's again a critical mass kind of thing. If you get a critical mass together, you can really do it. And I just looked up on the site for the New York one, which is coming up in a couple months. Yeah, 2 months, September 26th in New York. And for an adult, it is 50, and a student, it's 30, and that's for the whole weekend. So that's actually a lot less than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, well, that's not too bad. That's reasonably affordable, I think. And considering the size of the show that's usually put on, certainly the main Maker Faire is massive. Unfortunately, I'm going to be over there in October. I'm going to be in the US in October, mid to late October, so I'm going to miss that, unfortunately. So I would love to go to a Maker Faire. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, it would be. And hopefully they'll come back to the Midwest. So if anyone else is listening from... I guess we already said make, didn't we? But if you're still listening, come on back to the Midwest because it seems like it went pretty well. I saw a couple articles about like just all the people learning how to solder and all the really cool events they had there. So it seems like it was a resounding success, especially at the Henry Ford Museum.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. Please say solder again for me.
Solder?
Solder, yes, I love the American pronunciation of solder. Solder.
Solder.
With an L. Yeah.
With an L. There's no L in there, is there?
Apparently not in America, so there you go. We have solder. Solder's my favourite programming language. That's one of my favourite favourite quotes I like to use. Yeah.
I've heard that one before. That's a good one.
Yep, absolutely. I just, because software is just such a pain in the ass sometimes that, you just want to wire some chips up and have something work.
I know.
Yeah.
There was actually another question
I guess we can
on the forum was...
there was?
Yeah, there was why do people that are usually in software... And I'm not sure about the demographics here, but at least this person's experience was that a lot of people in the maker community, in the hacker or... do-it-yourself community, why are they usually software people? So what do you think about that, Dave?
Oh, well, because really that's just the way it is these days. To do something cool, you've typically got to do it in software. I mean, I hate to admit it, but there are limits to what you can do in hardware. I know in theory, you can do anything in hardware, but it's just so big and convoluted and expensive that it's just easier to do things in software these days. You whack in a microcontroller, it's got all the processing power you need to go to the moon, and it's got all these, it's got ADCs built in and all these peripherals and UARTs and all sorts of stuff, and just, and everything's interconnected. People want to connect up to Ethernet, or they want to, do something else, and it's just, you just can't avoid it these days, I'm afraid. So,
Yeah, another thing I've always thought about too is that, and something I've talked about with some of my friends is, if you're working on hardware all day, you get home and you might want to not. I mean, there's certain crazy people like me and Dave that aren't necessarily that way, but you might not want to work on resistors and transistors all day, and then go home and keep on doing it, because then it still feels a little bit more like work. Now, obviously, that's not the case for everybody. But it's understandable if that is the case, because it can be frustrating work, it can be hard work, or you could be working long hours. So not everybody has the desire, or maybe they have other hobbies too. I mean, like one of my big hobbies is music. I get home and I want to play some music to relax, and then I can go back and work on electronics if I want to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with me. I come home from work, but I might do, software at work and stuff like that. So, it's a mixed bag, but I come home and I have moods. Sometimes I want to just build something up. Other times, no, I don't want to go out to the lab. It's too cold. It's the middle of winter. I'd rather sit in the air-conditioned study and just, just cut some code and have my board blink a couple of LEDs or something like that. I find that immensely satisfying. So, yeah, it's all mood-based, as a lot of electronics is.
Yeah, so I think that might be one of the big things about why you see a couple more programmers than you would hardware people jumping into the hacker community and wanting to get their hands on hardware, because sometimes just writing the code to see that blinking LED is not enough. You actually have to put more LEDs on the board, or switch out the LED for a relay driver and start flipping some serious switches, turn on your vacuum cleaner, move the garage door up and down. That's when it really starts to get interesting, and you can really start to control your world around you. So I think that hopefully that answers this person's question.
Yeah, they actually had another part to that question, I think, which is it seems that it's more rare for someone to start with an analog foundation and then get into microcontrollers. And I think that's probably correct in my experience, anyway, because if you've watched the blog before, my good mate Doug Ford, who's been on the blog, he's an analog specialist, and really he doesn't do microcontrollers. He does absolutely brilliant analog stuff and power electronics and things like that, but it's microcontrollers. He has somebody else to do that for him. I don't know what his exact reason is. He just couldn't be bothered learning microcontrollers, or just hates them, or whatever. But he certainly actually appreciates the power of them and what they can do. But he doesn't actually do them himself. So he's one of those crusty old analog guys who doesn't want to touch them.
Well, I'm a little light on the crust, but I do a lot of analog stuff myself. And I think one of the other things too is that obviously analog is more fun. No, that's not always the case. But I think a lot of times it's exposure. It's not being exposed. Like, even though I do analog now, I was always when I was in school and when I work on stuff at home, there always is that microcontroller base that's there, and that was learning as you go. If you have been working in transistors, like straight transistors your whole life, it's a little harder to kind of carry that over. It's not saying that it can't be done, but when you see kind of like I saw that phrase the other day. When you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail, right?
It's like a nail, yeah.
And so right. if you see a problem where you need to compare a voltage and then flip a switch, you're probably going to do that with an op amp or comparator, as opposed to taking that DC data into an A to D reading it, reacting to it, comparing it to a value in software, outputting it to a DAC, flipping it, or even just flipping a bit, and then doing a relay. So it's not saying that there aren't other options. It's just that
it certainly is what you're familiar with. I mean, That's the thing. My friend Doug, who's the analog guy, he will do everything using transistors and op amps, whereas I might use a little pick to do something like that, because I was brought up in more of the digital design area, I guess you could say, and things like that. So discrete transistor design wasn't my forte back in the day. So I still have not a fear of doing it. It's just not, it's not intimately, it isn't really familiar to me.
Yeah, it's
so
not comfortable.
For me to go and design a full-on, a discrete, high-end audio amp using just transistors or something, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of work to me. So it's just something I'm not really familiar with.
No,
so I might chuck in the 50-cent micro, but I'm very much like on the Woz side of things, who's always had the philosophy of trying to make things, keep it really simple, optimize your design and things like that. So I love optimizing my design. So, but the optimizing can mean different things to different people. I mean, if you're an analog guy, you might think optimizing means using discrete transistors, even if you've got to use 10 or 20 of them instead of one pick. That might be optimizing it.
Right. Well, it's like what we talked about last time, too, about the, needing, sometimes even just using the built-in parts where there's vendors offering you a complete solution. That might, you might have to pay it a couple cents more, or even $1 more, but sometimes in terms of overhead and everything else, that is the optimized solution, as silly as that sounds.
If you're talking about board space or cost, yes,
it's
certainly.
Always those trade-offs.
But if you're talking about, you might think it's sacrilege to use a big custom chip to do something that you could do using analog parts or something like that. So yeah, it's all a matter of point of view.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see another question on here that kind of could feed into that. I mean, the person's asking about consumer products and their decline, and
oh yes,
yeah, I think
oh
probably
god,
all
how long's a piece of string?
Yeah,
how long's the show?
Yeah, how long's the show, and how long can the computers last while they're recording us, right? And I was thinking about something with this feed in there, but I guess optimizing. I guess those people are probably optimizing for cost, and how do you deal with that these days? How do you deal with the products that you're buying, you're paying good money for, and then you open it up, and then you see, well, this is it? Yeah.
Well, exactly. That reminds me of something one ASIC designer told me once. He came home and bragged to his wife, and look what I've done. And, I've spent 1.5 years working on this, and he showed her this little tiny bit of silicon, and she went, "You spent 1.5 years working on that?"
Yeah.
And it was just, this it was a 2mm by 2mm piece of silicon,
Yeah.
and it's amazing the amount of effort that can go into, optimizing that sort of product. Yet it might not impress the layperson. Mm-hmm. The consumer who's buying the product, and it's got, you open it up and there's one chip in there, and you go, well, how hard is that?
Oh, I wasn't talking about it like that. I was talking about the other direction. I mean, I'm sitting here staring at a record player I bought, and I paid about $100 for it, and I know that's kind of low cost, but when I bought it, and I got it on discount. I'm like, oh, this is such a great product, and there's some electronics in it, so it's sort of relevant. But then you open it didn't work when I got it home, so I'm rumbling and popping the back open, or the bottom rather, and it's just a tiny motor drive and all these tiny plastic components that are just like so frail looking, and how do you really deal with that these days? How do you go out and buy something that you think you're spending decent money on, and then you come to find out that A, it doesn't work, and B, you open it up and you see the exact reason why it doesn't work.
Well, as a consumer, that's very difficult because you don't have any technical knowledge. You've just got to go on some consumer review. But engineers like us, we can go, well, okay, I know, if I buy a Fluke multimeter, it's going to have quality engineering in it compared to a one hung low brand meter. That's, that costs $5 at your local hardware store. And
what was that brand?
It's the same with products. You can get a well-engineered phone, or you can get some cheap, copy from China that's just going to fall apart. So, but generally you've got to take it apart, look at it, inspect it, and so you've got to have a technical background to know. But the average consumer, it's pot luck, really, I think.
Right.
So, and price isn't always indicative. I'd like to think it is.
Your reviews always kind of show that. I mean, again, another plug for Dave's video blog, but if you've never seen the multimeter reviews, if you love multimeters, I mean, or even if you don't, you just need to find one, you can see a lot of the different bits of quality that go into different price ranges, and it's pretty amazing to see how much it can really span the gap of a good one can be $50 and a bad one can be $50.
Yep, exactly. So, yes, price isn't always indicative, which is crazy. Speaking of that, I've got a LCR meter that's due to come today, I think. When I get to work, it should be there. So nice. There's going to be a LCR meter triple review again. But I had lots of complaints last time that my last $100 shootout was like 2 hours and almost 2 hours or something, and I spread it over 2, so I'm going to actually spread new one. I'm going to do a separate review for each one, and then I'll do a summary review when I'm comparing meters like that. Anyway, let's not talk about the EEV blog, shall we?
Right. Well, there's another question on here about why is everything made in China? And, if the person asking doesn't know, obviously there's... Oh, they even say that there's cheap labor, obviously. But, there's actually... Again, we've been talking about critical mass today, but it's getting to the point where technical expertise is pretty great over there too. You look at the Foxcons of the world. That's the people that make Apple products and HP products, and a lot of the products that you have in your home probably that are electronics products, but are not necessarily the difficult to or the complex products so much as the difficult to assemble products. And they have all these great facilities out there. They employ 800,000 people over there. And
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a obscene amount of people. So they have all this
infrastructure. That's just one company and one big fabrication facility, really.
Right. Yeah, and that's the biggest one. So I think
I'm sure it's a big park. It's probably spread over different locations and things like that. But yeah, that's just one company, 800,000 people.
Yeah,
crazy.
So this person's asking why there's other countries with lower wages. Well, yes, that's true, but you have to also remember that for the past 20 years now, communist China's been. Not to get political or anything, but they've actually been pouring money into it, and that's actually a very good thing. I mean, they've been investing like crazy, and you look at their stimulus plan that they've had, and you look at all the benefits they have, and the way. I mean, obviously their government is very well on message, to themselves. So hopefully we won't get blocked in China or anything. But they're very focused on it, and it is, and that part of it is very. It's admirable because they understand that technology is a very important part of their economy, and that accumulating all this manufacturing capability is going to lock them in as the place you have to go for the next however many years.
That reminds me of the news thing that came out just this week, that India have, big publicity, big to-do about how they're going to create this $35 touchpad, iPad, notebook thing. It'll be, I think it's $35, might even be $25 or something. But yeah, and everyone, the media latch onto that. Oh, it's the future. Look at India, and it's just absolute bullshit. It's just marketing and political spin completely. There's no way India can produce a $35 iPad notebook thing. It's just because they don't have the infrastructure. They don't produce their own touch panel LCDs. They don't produce anything, they've got to buy it all from China, and they're just, step in line like everyone else,
Or
even Apple can't come along and buy the touch screen from a Chinese factory for $35. So there's no way India are going to.
Right, and I think the thing is that, with that kind of thing, they're probably just going to end up buying it and then subsidizing it, and they're like, oh, it's $35 for you, but, it's not going to go on forever. So yeah, you're
exactly
right.
so.
They have very strong software in India. I mean, we can't discount
yes,
that.
the quality is dubious, but yes, everyone coming out of university there has a PhD. Well, PhD in computer science, and they know VHDL, and they can do pretty much anything on the software side.
Right, and I mean hardware too. I know I've met many engineers from there too that are really strong hardware wise, but it's just I think you're right about the industry there is just it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the same focus on building infrastructure.
Yep.
Have you ever been over to China? I've only heard.
I've been to China. Yes, I've been to some of the assembly factories there, and and it really is remarkable. Just the amount of gear, and it's all high end, top quality. And this is just one of 10,000 assembly factories over there. It's just incredible the amount of machinery and the amount of labour that they had over there to do almost anything.
Right.
It's not so much their cheap labour. Their cheap labour helps, but it's the ecosystem they have in place and the grey market component industry they have over there, and that's really the key to it. Is people think it's just cheap labour in China. Well, it's not that cheap, and it's getting more expensive because everyone in China now wants the first world sort of. Everyone wants their own house and their car and their iPhone and their everything else, so they want to live in a more modern society, and that, they just can't help it. Maybe in 20 years' time, India will be the next, powerhouse. I don't know, because it started out being Japan, and then everything shifted to Taiwan, and then everything shifted from Taiwan to mainland China, and Korea who knows, too, China might, Yeah,
it's amazing. It's just technology is this bringer of wealth, and yet, you see people kind of rise and fall with it. I mean, Japan is still very strong technically, but they're not doing the manufacturing not nearly as much anymore. And now you see even China. I've been reading about China and how they're much more interested in natural resources, but how they're investing infrastructure in Africa now, and that's their low cost labor, which is amazing. You just see like this amazing ecosystem forming, with some political background to it too as well. I mean, there's obviously a lot of push in certain directions, but just this bringer, technology is this bringer of wealth, and some good, some bad, but obviously me and Dave like the technology side of things, and I'm sure that
we do
1 year or 2 years or 6 months even, there will be, or there already are people in China, talking about this stuff on the internet as well. Can't say I'm real privy to what they're talking about in China, nor are they real privy to what we're talking about here, because it's probably filtered. But that again is another issue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't get me started on internet filtering.
Oh, right. Touchy issue with the Aussies. I've been told how to pronounce that by Dave. It's not Aussies as I used to say. It's Aussies.
Aussie. Oh, there you go. That was pretty good.
All right.
That was pretty good. Yes, as in Ozzy Osbourne.
That's right. Yeah, that's good. So everybody out there now knows it. It's Ozzy as in Ozzy Osbourne. So another thing I wanted to mention about China is the have you read at all about the conflict minerals? Have you heard about that at all?
No. What's conflict minerals?
So it's kind of like this. I've heard of conflict diamonds, which were in Africa. Have you heard about those?
Oh yeah.
So that's
right.
That was a big thing for many years. It funded some military activities that weren't so great, but that there's really big reserves now of tantalum and lithium and all these things that are really important, or gold even, that are very important for technology. And you see China going, and the U.S. too. I mean, they just found in Afghanistan, they found it a while ago. There's a New York Times article about it, but they found these rich mineral deposits in Afghanistan, basically that point towards the future of Afghanistan could be the mining industry of, hey, we got...
Really?
Yeah, like one of the biggest lithium deposits in the world. And they've known about it, but they just released it. And it was something like $4 trillion over the next however many years. I don't want to put numbers on it again because I'm not looking at it, but it was an obscene amount of money. And
that's crazy. And, of course, lithium's very important now that the cars and the batteries, we're going to have electric cars, and they all need lithium-ion batteries. And lithium is, apparently, that's one of the bottlenecks to, getting all these cars out there powered from batteries. There's lithium is one of the main things. And you mentioned tantalum. Tantalum's another major rare earth metal that Australia produces about 90%, I think, of the world's tantalum. Yes. Oh yeah, we manufacture most of it or mine most of it. We have the world's largest deposits here in Australia, and China is, of course, buying. There's a big thing in Australia at the moment where China is buying up all our mineral companies. They're trying to buy all of our companies, and the government are trying to let it happen. Well, there's parts of the government that want to let it happen because it's good for,
investment.
It's good politics and it's good. But there's the other part, it's the Australian people don't like the concept of China owning everything in Australia. But yeah, that's happening. It's hard to stop.
Yeah,
so,
and I think the same thing's happening elsewhere with China and buying other. I saw even in that same New York Times article that China was already swooping in and looking to buy stuff in Afghanistan. They're already looking there. They're already looking everywhere else. And it's just as much like how we talked about last time with like the buying power of these big technology companies like the Apples. Well, the people that make that stuff, like the Foxcons of the world, or even the lesser known manufacturers, they all need raw materials from somewhere. So it all just kind of propagates down the line, and all these supply issues just ripple back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, it's incredible, and and actually protecting those interests is the big thing. So who knows? Maybe the US is still in Afghanistan, not just for the oil. Maybe they're there for the minerals too. I don't want to be cynical, of course.
Don't get us shut down this soon. It's only the second show. I mean, I don't want people in my house.
Yeah, come on, US, shut us down. Come on. I dare you.
Testing freedoms.
Dave and his pirate radio show from Australia,
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Yeah. No, poor old Chris, I don't want the FBI to show up in your doorstep and
I doubt
raid your basement there in Cleveland.
Yeah, I doubt it's that big a deal. But,
even
the, we're talking about minerals, but you even see the really rare ones, like the ones that go into like manufacturing of silicon and stuff, like the yttriums and everything else, like all these crazy ones.
Very rare.
I mean, or how they're achieving different band gaps in LEDs with all these different materials now. And LEDs is going to be a huge market. We talked about that a little bit last time, but
oh yes,
I mean, you think about all of the light bulbs in every house. So 6 billion people on the planet. If every single one was lucky enough to have an LED light bulb, or maybe more, but probably it would even out to one based on poverty levels and everything. That is and LEDs don't last forever either. I mean,
no,
incandescents are not great, and compact fluorescents last a little bit longer, but LEDs, probably about 10x the lifespan. And you think about that, that's a lot of LEDs right there. And
that's a shitload of LEDs, and the technology is just growing exponentially there. It's crazy. I mean, Cree have got 200 lumens per watt now.
Yeah.
It really is. That is remarkable. That's beating compact fluoros, and it's just, it's just incredible. So, 5 years ago, I would have called you crazy if you said LEDs were going to, actually replace fluoro lighting anytime soon, but geez, it's come a long way in a short time, and it's just going to get better.
And you wonder about, semiconductor fabs are not easy to build, but, you wonder about the capacity of those and how they're going to build all these things. I mean, obviously they're going to, once the money is there, it's going to ramp up like crazy, but, man, that's going to be a lot. I just hope that some of it, comes to the U.S. or Australia. A lot of that stuff is overseas for us, and it's going to be great to have the energy efficiency of these things, but if you're some kind of rich if you're some kind of rich semiconductor investor, be sure to pop a few semiconductor fabs in the Midwest for us, if you would.
Yes, well, local manufacturing and local industry is very important, I think, because it's people just rely on the fact that importing is so cheap. But you can bet your bottom dollar that 20 years down the track, it's not going to be as cheap to ship things across the world as oil becomes a bit more scarcer and prices go up, and prices for oil aren't going to go down. So things have to be shipped by ship. People, there's huge, tens of thousands of cargo ships bring all this stuff in, and that takes resources to do too. So yeah, it's going to be strategically important. Maybe maybe not for 10 or 20 years, but sort of beyond that.
Definitely in our lifetime.
Yeah, definitely in our lifetime. It's in another 30 years, I think. I'll still be around. Hopefully, still doing the blog.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh yeah.
Still
blog
ranting
number
on.
10,452.
That's it. I need I need 10 exabytes of data transfer on my website or something instead of terabytes.
Right.
Yeah. But, so, it's, having that local industry there is important. And of course, Australia has thrown away everything over the last, 20 or 30 years or something. Everything's done overseas. And, there's a lot of R&D still done here. But as far as manufacturing goes, no, we've just pissed it all away. The government's just, Well,
I think it's just kind of now it's like people are realizing that, this is kind of important. I mean, like they saw it as it went, but now it's like, now that a lot of it's gone, it's like, wow, that really affected a lot more things than we thought it was going to.
Well, that's right. I mean, I'm not sure if how many people know this, but the world's largest solar cell manufacturer is in China, not surprisingly.
Right.
But the guy who founded that company is from the University of New South Wales.
Oh, really?
Which does world-leading research. He's actually an Australian or Chinese Australian, Chinese background, and he actually did all his research here on those solar cells and how to manufacture them cheaply. And he tried to set up, this is, I'm not sure how long ago, 10 years ago maybe, he tried to set up, a manufacturing industry here for solar cells, tried to get the government involved. Look, we can be world leaders. And they basically told him to piss off.
Oh.
So, so he went, well, bugger you, I'm going to China. And he went to China, and now I think he's in the top 5 richest men in China or something. He's one of China's richest men, and he owns, I can't remember the name of the solar cell manufacturer. I'm sure
Is it First Solar,
somebody
maybe?
out there does, but, sorry?
Is it First Solar? I think that's one of them, or Sun...
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell. But anyway, he founded that. Now he's one of the richest men in China, and Australia missed out. That's just one of the examples of, and now of course the government's trying to scramble to get some manufacturing back here and stuff. And they let the BP solar plant here in Sydney manufacturing solar cells. They let that close down, and now they're opening it again. And too little, too late, really.
Right. Well, as is proven here, Dave is never shy about saying what he thinks about the Australian government. So
no, the Australian government sucks. There's a soundbite for you.
There you go. That'll be on the website. There you go. That'll be the first thing posted if we ever figure out our domain name. So, Dave, what about what about other big needs? I mean, you're talking about solar, and we talked about LEDs. I mean, what else do you see in the future? I mean, that's something we want to talk about today. The futures for 10 years of electronics. What do you see 10 years out?
Well, I'll tell you what. Talk about something a bit obscure. Well, it's not obscure. It's a key tool everyone uses, and that's EDA. CAD. Everyone's got their schematic and PCB design tool, and they're used to doing things like that. But you may have noticed a lot of companies now are starting to get manufacturer integration into there, so that you don't need to leave your CAD package to go and search parts on DigiKey and Mouser and all that sort of stuff and get stock online. And I think that's a huge future because, as I've said in one of my blogs, 90% of my time, often I'll just spend searching, DigiKey and Mouser, looking for the right part and all that sort of stuff. And you wouldn't believe the amount of time that a typical design engineer would waste just trying to find a part or something like that. So it's crazy. So if all that sort of stuff is taken out of the equation, the design cycles for products can actually drastically shorten with, these new tools coming out. So I think, 20 years ago, it used to be 18 months was the typical product design life cycle or something, and now it's down to 9 months. And I can see that, I think that's the standard time everyone uses in the industry at the moment is 9 months to develop a product from start to finish, and I see that coming down even further.
Yeah, I I mean, I don't know about 10 years. I think that could happen in almost 2 years from the way you speak about it.
Oh, yeah.
That seems so if there's anyone out there listening about, working for a vendor, hop on the ball here. That's something we could really use.
Absolutely.
That is an instantly implementable device that Dave and I would pick up. And I think you're completely right about that. When you said EDA before, I thought you were going to talk about the chip side of things and how, those guys
Oh, no.
crazy.
Yeah.
But
the terminology's a bit muddied there, but
because I mean that stuff's getting crazy too. I mean, you think about how complex these chip design. I mean, you and I only have limited, on-chip experience, but you think about how complex these things get, and they have huge server farms just cranking on this stuff all the time.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, that's obviously going to have to get more complex as it goes along, and it might just track with the server technology and computer technology, but that's obviously going to be a big deal in 10 years as well.
Well, exactly. And the other interesting thing about the EDA industry, the chip side of the EDA industry, like the silicon layout side, is that it's a well-known fact in the industry that the companies like Mentor and Cadence that do those sort of real high-end tools that the Apples and the Sonys of the world use to design all their custom chips. They're actually getting fewer and fewer customers because they're the tools are that complex and that expensive that really they just have to keep increasing the price of the tool as their customers become fewer and fewer that are willing to invest in developing ASICs, and it's just nobody knows where that cycle's going to end, but
I've seen things about that where they actually talk about pulling I read some EDA blogs once in a while. There's actually a good number of EDA bloggers, and and one of them was talking about how chip manufacturers might try and pull those things back in, like the TSMC of the world might try and buy out a Cadence, which would cause a big hullabaloo, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's talk about that because they want to just not sell chips and sell their their fab plant capability anymore. They want to get into the design side of things. So, who knows what the future is there, but some of these companies are getting a bit desperate as the markets for that sort of thing get complex and dry up.
I wonder about just the size of companies too. You look at like Apple. Apple is a huge company right now, right? Well, I don't know. I kind of ignore Microsoft these days, but there's a lot of huge TSMC. That's another good example. They can keep getting bigger. They're not going to get. If you look at it as a business side of things, they're going to keep growing at some rate that's pretty standard. You can't move that. You can't move the Titanic that fast. So they're not going to grow at 20% a year, but they're going to keep growing probably, as long as people keep needing more chips. But I wonder about the future of the electronics business, of if it'll trend back towards smaller companies or keep trending with, more not condensation, but, gathering more companies together. Sorry, my grammar's pretty bad there. But these companies keep getting bigger and bigger and making more acquisitions, or if it'll trend back towards a smaller because of the maker market and all those kind of things, people being able to make devices and even manufacture from home. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a huge divide there between the companies that actually manufacture all these niche, all these massive high-end chips and the people like the hackers and the makers and the small companies and the medium companies who actually just, really just use the chips at a system sort of level. So I think there's always going to be two divides there. But it's interesting to see what happens. There's been a lot of consolidation in the industry of companies buying out other companies and merging and all sorts of things, and that's been the norm in the last 10 years or so, I think. But where it goes in the future, I don't know. It's just a very fluid, dynamic industry that sort of changes direction a lot.
Yeah, and even if
not fundamental direction, but as technology changes, it's sort of driven one way or the other. It steers the ship, so to speak.
Right, and I mean, even if you look at like startups today, startups usually are not looking to become huge companies, though. They're looking. So if you have an EDA startup, they're probably hoping to be bought out by Cadence or Mentor or whoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you have a small hardware startup, they're hoping to, like the PA Semis. That was a fabless chip company that got bought out by Apple, and I don't know if that was actually their intent in the beginning, but that was what happened. But I think that is the exit strategy for a lot of smaller companies. So you're right. There is this big divide of, once you even get past a certain point, can you compete, or do you just have to get bought out?
I think you just got to get bought out. That's the old axiom of startups, isn't it? Is that you basically, you're looking to get bought out in the end, ultimately, unless you're some, nutter like, the Facebook owner who turned down $1 billion to, to buy Facebook a year or two back,
Yeah, maybe.
He'll never get but yeah.
But he can make his own money back, maybe. I mean, you never know. I guess it's just like bravado and thinking you can build your own thing just as big.
Well, one interesting startup, Silicon Blue, I think their name is. Don't quote me on that, but if you Google them, they're actually an FPGA startup. They're actually developing a FPGA, just like Xilinx, Altera, and Lattice. And you think, how can you possibly compete with those big three or the big two major FPGA makers? But there they are. They're producing their little FPGA chips. I'm not sure which. I think they're extremely low power or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a lot of them claim, but that's not really much of a help.
Yeah.
You're always going to get a lower power solution in a dedicated embedded processor or something, a dedicated micro or something like that.
Yeah.
FPGA is for some applications. Yeah. So you've got to think, well, what is their exit strategy? Do we want to be a fourth or a fifth FPGA vendor? It's like, I don't think so. I think they're just looking to they developed a cool technology in some someone's PhD thesis at uni or something, and then they went out and formed their startup, got some venture capital, and they're but that's the thing, you're under the pump. The venture capitalists are the ones who gave you the money, and they want to make their return.
Right.
So
they want to sell it back as soon as possible.
Exactly. They want a return on investment as quickly as they can. So, yeah, well, there's not much you can do there, but, geez, I wish I had a startup and I could sell out to the biggies. I've got no problem selling out at all. I don't think. I'll take the money and run. Thank you very much.
I don't know, man. Would you sell out EEV blog these days? I don't know if you would. I think if someone came in and said, Dave, I want to pay you $200K a year, and I want you to create all these videos talking about our wonderful $25 multimeter that is one and a half digits, and the stand always breaks. I don't know if you'd do that. Would you?
Well, I did an April. I'm not sure if you saw my April Fool's blog last year, and I actually I did that. Like, I did a blog as if I had sold out, to a company where I was only going to review their products, and I was only going to, not allowed to say bad things anymore. Yeah. And I don't know. Everyone has a price. I wouldn't sell out for a couple of $100,000, but if someone is talking a couple of $1 million, yeah, hell,
I just imagine,
I might take the money and go on to something else.
I just imagine them buying you out, and then like the next day, your site gets all fancy, and then you see they get like some other Australian being like sitting there and like pretending to be you. And being like, he's like swearing in very proper manner and talking about multimeters and except they call them something like digimeters or something like that. Some kind of hilarious hijinks like that.
That would be hilarious. But I'm being approached at the moment by companies who want me to do certain things with my blog and, do things for them or even merge with their website and things like that. And, I've basically told them no, pretty much go away, My professional services as a blogger are for hire, by the way. If anyone works for a major manufacturer, if you want me to do some, some stuff for you, I'm happy to do that. But, the blog's not for sale. Piss off.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good thing too. You hope that the little guys stick around. You're always cheering for like the Adafruits and the Spark Funds, because in the end, someone else is going to pop up. Even if Spark Fund got bought tomorrow and Mauser bought them, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be a very good idea, but because it's a growing market, but it's not a lucrative market. If they get bought tomorrow, someone else is going to pop up probably and fill that space. And so,
of course they will.
You always cheer for them because they're fighting the good fight. They are dealing with the late night orders or the asking engineers at 10 o'clock on a Friday or Saturday, whenever they do that. So we always appreciate all those people that do that.
Well, exactly, and I've got no, it's people say I've already sold out and stuff like that on the blog. And it's like, piss off! You don't know what you're talking about, really. You have no idea. It's. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like if I stop my video blog tomorrow, there'd be someone around to, to continue on. I'm sure, somebody'd fill that niche again. Absolutely.
I'm sure my ugly mug would pick up a video camera at some point then. But
you think? Oh, there you go. I
don't know
the Chris
about
Gamble video blog. Excellent. Well, we should probably call it quits for the day.
Yeah,
It's been
like
over an
about
hour, Chris.
Yeah, so that's good.
It's been good, and we'll keep these limited to an hour, I think.
Yeah, we better. I'll fall out of my chair
exactly.
any longer.
Excellent. Well, all right. I think it's been a good one, and hopefully, if I press save and it's the recording saved at my end. Otherwise, we've lost the whole show. So,
that'd be bad.
All right.
So yeah, and
thanks
also,
everyone for listening.
Thank you for listening. If you have any further names, we're still looking for that. And if you have any questions, there's a place for that on eevblog.com/forum. And or you can always leave it in the comments of either Dave or I's site. So we appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Absolutely. See you next time, guys.
Bye-bye.